Are you ready for the Alchemized apologetics session? So the people who love this book love it, and the people who hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it. That's right. It's Alchemized by SenLinYu. So yes, originally this was a Draco Hermione fanfiction called Manacled that was basically like, what if Harry Potter died, Voldemort won, and shit went to fuck? I did not read it as a fanfiction, but it was huge. Like, it was downloaded, I think, more than 16 million times and translated into 19 languages. And that would be gangbusters for a traditionally published book. But as a fanfic, that is insane. It was revised and published as its own novel in 2025. 2025 did bring us other traditionally published Hermione fics, like Rose in Chains and The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy. I know some people feel some sort of way about Alchemized having fanfic roots, like it's some kind of sign of illegitimacy. I mean, it's even published under the author's screen name and not like their actual name. To some people, this is always going to be a Dramione book. It's always going to live under Hogwarts' big oppressive shadow. Readers are going to be looking for the Harry Potter connection. I mean, look at me, like, I did it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep doing it. But how can you not? I'm sure being a Harry Potter fanfic factored into the decision to publish it. I mean, it certainly added to its notoriety. It's SenLinYu's first published novel, and it was a #1 New York Times bestseller. That's huge. Like, would that have happened if not for the Potter of it all? However, big however, I think this book is best enjoyed if you drop the Harry Potter comparison. Helena is not Hermione. Kane isn't Draco. While we're at it, it is not a romantasy either. And I think if you come into it with the expectation like that it's going to be like maybe a dark romantasy or something, you're going to be disappointed. Like, that's not its vibe. In my opinion, it's a dark fantasy that happens to be centered around a love story, even though the love story like is the A plot. I wanted to judge Alchemized for its own merits, so I chose not to read Manacled first. And also, no one was going to convince me to make time for a 1,000-page fanfic. I'm busy. So I loved it as soon as I read it, like immediately adored it. But now that I've like sat with it for maybe a month, like I have some thoughts. One of them is that it is long. The entire book is 1,031 pages on my Kindle. Like, it's a real doorstop. Okay, well, it would be if I had a paper book. But with the length and the way it's structured, I felt more like I was reading an entire series back to back to back. Today, I am just going to explain the world building in part 1, which is 279 pages. There are 3 parts total, and yes, this will be a 3-part series. Okay, so here's the gist. Alchemized takes place in the city-state of Paladia. An alchemist named Helena is pulled out of a stasis tank to the aftermath of a long and brutal war that the good guys lost. She is the last surviving member of the Order of the Eternal Flame, and her memories of the last months of the war have been totally trapped within her. And she was just a healer, so what info would she have that would be so important to protect? She's sent to the Gothic country estate of Cain Farron, one of the most powerful and ruthless necromancers of New Paladia, as he tries to unlock her memory. The book is pretty dark, and there's this kind of Handmaid's Tale thing going on. There's rape. There's torture. Some people found it gratuitous. Look, people are split on this book. We'll get into all of it when the time comes. The second part explores the war in a way that is so different from what I'm used to reading. It's kind of about like how like in war, do you do what's morally right, or do you do what it takes to survive and to win? And it's also like, how much agency do you really have? And the aesthetics and the way that the technology is improving and changing and responding to things. I don't know. I adored it. Part 3 obviously is all about just wrapping everything up. But today we're starting with the lore. The first part is pretty heavy on the lore dump. A lot of people hated that about it. It was not clunky and complicated enough to bother me. I'm kind of not surprised that it turned out that way. Manacled gets to the plot a lot quicker than Alchemized. I know I said I didn't read it, but I did skim it just to, answer some questions I had. And I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, readers know that world already. I know what you're thinking. Xtina, you're going to give me a 10-minute lore dump before we even touch the summary? Who is this book even for? Me. It's for me. It's for me and all the other hungry little lore hounds who love a fan wiki, okay? That's who. I'm at a green screen and I am going to get my money's worth, okay? So I'll see you there. Behold, the world of Alchemized. Before we zoom in, please note Paladia's 2 neighbors, Novus and Hevgos. The northern continent is referred to as the North, which has a more reserved and conservative culture than the South. Not pictured on the map for obvious reasons are the 2 moons, Luna and Lumithia. Luna is basically our moon, same cycles, same size, same joie de vivre. Lumithia is a bigger moon. Its cycles are much longer, like it only gets full 2 times a year, which is called ascendance. During that time, alchemists get a little bit loony, and it makes everybody better at alchemy. The new moon period is called abeyance, and that calms the ocean and makes it possible to travel the seas. That'll be more important in part 2. Zoom and enhance. Here we have the city-state of Paladia. SenLinYu describes Paladia as, quote, Paladia is a sort of fantastical combination of Singapore, the British slums, and Kowloon walled city, plus a nod to Mountbatten. Paladia is made up of the East Island and the West Island. Now, you might think that this is not a practical place to found a city, and you would be wrong, because it's a place where lumithium is in abundance. So lumithium is a magical metal that binds air, water, earth, fire, and probably heart to create alchemical resonance, which we will get to. Lumithium can only be mined by people without resonance, because overexposure to pure lumithium makes people with resonance sick. Because there's so much lumithium, Paladia has way more alchemists than the rest of the world. And also, I know, lumithium, lumithia, it's confusing. To help you remember, it's lumithium, like metal. Lumithia, like when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. To train all those alchemists, Paladia built the Alchemy Institute, which is the biggest building in the city. You'll see it on the East Island. Another thing to note is the Outpost, which is this big factory in the river. We're going to see what she's all about in part 2. And then, you've got Spirefell there in the corner. Also, did you know that these maps weren't included in the book? Like, you would think with all of the useless vanity maps and books that do not need them, they could include them here where I actually felt like I needed it. Anyways, let's talk alchemy. Alchemy is the core of the magic system. It's kind of like arcane alchemy with like Full Metal Alchemist characteristics. Most people have alchemical resonance, which is kind of this like magic connection to metals, fire, or life. It is described as a kind of like feeling or sense. I imagine it's like being on the same wavelength as something, or like whatever a tuning fork might feel. Alchemists may have resonance with multiple types of metals, but they're usually only proficient in a few types. This is called their repertoire. So like somebody proficient in like iron, titanium, and nickel would call that their repertoire. Using alchemy to change and transform things is called transmutation. Metal alchemy is called metallurgy. You'll also hear about combat alchemy, especially in part 2. That uses custom weapons that work with the alchemist's resonance. Alchemy can also be done like chemistry, which is called chymiatria. And alchemy can be done with arrays, which are kind of like spells. Again, think Full Metal Alchemist. Some people have no resonance at all to the minds with them. The child of 2 alchemists without resonance is called a lapse, and that's uncommon. And then some people have resonance with fire, which is called pyromancy. Pyromancers can't create fire, they can just control it. And they wear like ignition rings on their fingers, which allow them to like strike fires in their hands. Think Colonel Mustang from Full Metal Alchemist if you've seen that. Some people have resonance with living things, and this is called vivimancy. It requires physical touch to perform. It used to be forbidden in Paladia because the faith considered it the byproduct of a defective soul. The church allowed it so long as somebody used it to be a healer, but they did require that the vivimancer be sterilized to prevent them from possibly passing on their corrupted soul to their children. So because of that, like a lot of vivimancers would hide their power. We'll talk more about the church later. Vivimancy is also risky to use. Overuse drains the user's life force, which is called the toll. If somebody gets pregnant with a vivimancer baby, the toll will drain the mother's life. So a lot of vivimancer mothers and mothers of vivimancers will die early. Most vivimancers can also use necromancy, which is more like reanimation, not resurrection. Reanimated corpses are called necrothralls. Their souls are gone, they can't really talk, and they're not capable of advanced movements or following advanced directions. They can see and hear, though. And they are literal dead bodies, right? Like, they smell like preservatives because it's like you gotta keep them fresh. They smell like rot, they smell like decay. They're honestly pretty gross. Necromancy was obviously even more forbidden by the faith. And only a small number of vivimancers are capable of animancy, which is resonance with, like, the mind and soul. They can like investigate pathways in a person's mind, which gives them like a glimpse of their thoughts. It's not like true mind reading. They can't like go through their brain with a fine-tooth comb. And now the words everyone wants to hear. Let's talk politics and religion. Historically, trades in Paladia were controlled by guilds, which were based around a metal. So it's like there's an iron guild, a nickel guild, a copper guild, an etc. guild. They own and run that metal's industry. So like, for example, the Iron Guild controls iron and steel production, which has obviously become a lot more important as the world is industrialized. Guilds kind of operate like, nobility meets like titans of industries and monopolies in the early 1900s. So like one family runs the guild. Marriages will be arranged in the guild based on business partnerships and like genetic matches. Historically, guild alchemists didn't stay at the institute more than 5 years. They just stayed long enough to earn a basic certification. Without that, they wouldn't be able to call themselves professional alchemists or use alchemy without professional supervision. Before the war, the guilds believed that the holdfasts were preventing industrialization and stifling scientific progress. They thought that they should run the country and the holdfasts should stick to running the church. Because Luke was only 16 when Apollo Holdfast was assassinated, and we'll get to that, the guilds declared a democratically run guild assembly would rule Paladia. That's what the whole war was about. Moro, the High Necromancer, backed the guild, and he's the leader of the bad guys. His closest followers are the Undying. They're more powerful than normal alchemists. They're immortal, and they can regenerate from basically any injury. But sometimes their bodies are destroyed past the point of recovery. Then they're given a new necrothrall body to occupy. The Resistance had a special slur for them, which was liches. Liches can still use alchemy, but they're limited to whatever their host body's resonances were. So for example, like someone with iron resonance might be placed into a pyromancer's body, and then they would have to learn how to use pyromancy. On the other side, you had people affiliated with the holdfasts, the normies, the ones who later became the Resistance. They followed the sacred faith, which was the traditional religion of Paladia. They believe that resonance is a gift from Sol, the god of the sun, and the godhead of their pantheon. Their beliefs are kind of a mixed bag that we'll explore throughout the book, especially during part 2, but they tend to be very restrictive and very conservative. If Paladia is Sol's chosen nation, then the Holdfast family was Sol's chosen leaders. They ran Paladia before the war. And because they're the sun's favorites, only they have the ability to transmute gold. They're also pyromancers. And they're also the de facto head of religion, but there are actual religious leaders, one of which is named Falcon Matthias. We'll learn more about him in book 2. Principate Apollo Holdfast's assassination is what kicked off the war. His son, Lucian Holdfast, aka Luke, was the leader of the Resistance, the Order of the Eternal Flame, and technically Paladia during the war. His death marked the end of the war and the Resistance. He was Harry Potter in a past life. The Principates each had a paladin primary who was basically their own personal knight. Luke's was Lila Bayard, who I believe was the first woman to do the job. And you've heard me mention the Order of the Eternal Flame or the Order or the Eternal Flame. That was their inner circle and their council group. Not everybody in the Resistance was part of the Eternal Flame, and in fact, probably most weren't. The Holdfasts also ran the Alchemy Institute, which was part university, part palace, part government building, part church. At the top of the Alchemy Institute was the Eternal Flame, which had a fire that never went out. The Alchemy Institute trained young alchemists from around 10 years old through college ages, and there were different levels of qualifications and certifications that they offered, all the way up to PhD-style advanced research. Most students were from Paladia, but the Holdfasts also sponsored super talented students from around the world. The tension between the guilds and those aligned with the Holdfasts existed within the institute as well. There were a limited number of slots for students. Some of them were reserved for guild students, and getting in was very competitive, and the guild students tended to resent the sponsored students for taking up those limited spots. Now, the obvious solution here would be to expand the institute and offer more spots, but no, they couldn't do that, because the guilds actually supported keeping spots limited because it drove up the value of their credentials, and uncertified alchemists were cheaper to hire in factories. And the guilds wanted to ensure that the guild heirs got the top spots, even if they weren't the best alchemists. Now, just to make it easy, I'm just going to break down a basic timeline of the war, and remember that all of this happens prior to the start of the book. Guilds weren't happy with the Holdfasts. Moro used the guilds to rise to power. Apollo Holdfast was assassinated. Guilds declare that Paladia is a democracy now. War for 6 years. Moro kills Luke and wins the war. I am cutting out a lot, but that's basically what you need to know before we get into it. Let's meet the main characters. Now, we do not have the luxury of a 7-book series to gradually introduce us to all of these guys, so I'm just going to tell you who matters for part 1. Helena Marino is our protagonist. She's in her early 20s. She is one of the smartest, most talented, capable alchemists ever. She's also a vivimancer and was a healer for the Resistance. At age 10, she immigrated from Etruss, which is in the south. She was a member of the Order of the Eternal Flame. Her Harry Potter counterpart is Hermione, but her personality is very different. You'll see. Cain Farron is kind of our love interest, antagonist, anti-hero, kind of all of the above. Also early 20s. He was also one of the smartest, most talented alchemy students, but he dropped out when he was 16 to join the Undying. He assassinated Apollo Holdfast to start the war. He is the High Reeve, which is sort of this head assassin, head general, murder man kind of position, and it's also a secret from the general public. And he's heir to the Iron Guild. You're mostly going to hear me refer to him as Farron during part 1, but he's also Cain sometimes. He's also Draco Malfoy. Moro is the High Necromancer, the Great Undying, the big bad necromancer that runs Paladia. He's yucky and we hate him, and he is, of course, Voldemort. Now, I know that I gave you their Harry Potter counterparts, so you might feel compelled to try to figure out who everybody was. Don't do that, okay? You will enjoy the book so much more if you don't do that. However, I know that some of you are curious, so I'm just going to stick them on the screen, pause, read it if you want, just like do not get too attached. I feel like everybody's kind of evolved past these in some way, and some of them are characters that are honestly like so minor you might not even recognize them at all. And also, yes, this book is very dark. I'm just going to flash a list of content warnings on the screen for this section only, and I'm going to flag parts that might bother you when they happen so that you can skip them. And yes, I said flag, I'm so sorry. Corporate girlies know it's hard to shake that. Oh my gosh, you're back. And then I love including spoilers, so there will be spoilers. I want to tell you what happens in the book, and I don't want to dance around it. But if you don't like spoilers, honestly, turn back now because I'm not really going to flag them. Got it? Good. Let's get going. So Alchemised starts with Helena getting pulled out of this stasis tank. She was floating in it, immobile, in the dark, unable to see, unable to speak, unable to interact with anything for 14 months. All she knew is that somebody would come for her. She was regularly getting zapped with electricity, which kept her conscious, which was weird. Also, her records are bad and contradictory. All Helena remembers from before was being captured at the Alchemy Tower. She remembers seeing resistance members killed, reanimated, and used to kill and brutalize more prisoners. It was awful. She doesn't really remember the war. She remembers Apollo Holdfast's murder and what ended up happening with the war, but everything else is just boring hospital stuff. A woman processing her uses Vivimancy to check out Helena's brain, which she pulls up on a resonance screen, which is kind of like a magic X-ray. Helena's mind looks like nothing she's ever seen. It's built different, and by that I mean worse. Someone's used alchemy to totally rewrite the patterns of her brain in a way that could have left her brain dead. Then she sees this girl Grace, who she knew during the war. So Grace had disfigured her face with these awful scars because then she would be less likely to be used and abused by the Undying. That happens a lot to surviving members of the Resistance. She also plans to sell one of her eyes to support her family. And I'm telling you this because this is a glimpse into what life is like for people who are part of the Resistance now that the war is done. The Eternal Flame is all dead, and everyone else in the Resistance has been sent to the outpost to work. Anybody who runs gets hunted down, executed, and reanimated. Lila Bayer, Luke's paladin primary, was the first person the High Reeve hunted down. Her corpse was mutilated, dressed in paladin armor, and stationed at the outpost gate. Helena is in a place called Central, which was once the Alchemy Institute, but all the art and beauty and everything that made it has been stripped from it, and it's full of necrothralls. Helena is horrified. This was the first thing I noticed that I was like, this probably hit harder in the fanfic, because I knew and loved Hogwarts, and so seeing it defaced probably would have bummed me out. But at this point, we don't know enough about Helena or her relationship with this place to care, and we're told that it's, and I'm going to read a quote here, like coming home and finding all the comfort it had once offered torn apart, the beauty flensed, everything once familiar peeled off into ruin. But for me, it was sorry, your old high school's fucked up now. Helena is taken to an exam room with a woman named Dr. Stroud, and there we see Moro for the first time. His limbs are all janky and weird, triple, quadruple jointed. He had this skeletal face and translucent pale skin, and his eyes are these black voids, but he can still see. And Helena's looking at him and she keeps thinking damn, this dude has way too many bones. They're joined by Shiseo, who is from the east. He used to consult with the Eternal Flame, but he's alive, so he must be a traitor. He doesn't recognize her, but he confirms that she was a healer. Shiseo puts these nullification manacles on her, which is honestly very icky, but I do have to describe it. He runs this all through the wrist, leaves a hole, and then clamps a manacle around her wrist. They have totally turned off Helena's ability to feel her resonance and do alchemy, and there's no lock, so it can't be opened without alchemical resonance. Yes, these are the manacles of manacled fame. Warden Mandel, the overseer when Helena was put into the dunk tank, is brought in to answer for what she did to Helena. She said that Helena tormented her and needed to be punished. And it's our Helena? Our sweet baby girl? Mora was not impressed. He rips her chest open, tears a piece of metal out from near her heart, and shoves it in the body of a nearby necrothrall. And she is so back. There's also a theory that Helena may have transmuted her own mind, since she was stored wearing an old model of manacles that let her use a little resonance as a treat. They figured the Eternal Flame must have hidden something super important in Helena's memories, so they're going to do their damnedest to try to recover them. Moros suspects that the Eternal Flame figured out how to transfer a soul into a living body. Shiseo said that the Resistance had done some homebrew magic brain surgery to try and fix the brain damage that their General Bayard, who was Lila's father, had suffered during the war. If the Resistance had an animancer, it would probably have been Luke's personal healer, Elaine Boyle. Helena didn't know her, and she didn't even know the Resistance had other healers. They planned to have an animancer gradually invade her mind to get her memories, and the guy for the job is the High Reeve. Helena's driven to Spirefell, which is this Gothic manor in the Palladian countryside. Aurelia Farron, his wife, is outside waiting for her. Aurelia walks her into the house, and Helena has a pretty visceral reaction to some red roses in the foyer. She has a pretty violent relationship with the color red because it reminds her of blood. And Spirefell's a little different because it's staffed with less rotten, better preserved, better animated necrothralls than the ones in Central. Stroud and Aurelia take her to see the whitest man she's ever seen. He has silver white hair, so at first Helena's like, oh, it's Peepaw, but it's not. He's her age, and his name is Kane Farron. Helena remembers him having dark hair, not bleach white with silver eyes. Weird. Stroud's like, ta-da! Here's the last member of the Order of the Eternal Flame. And Farron's just like, Stroud tells him to get the memories by December, but this timeline will add no tension and will not matter. Aurelia whines about them having to keep this awful, poor, possibly Italian woman around, and Kane tells her to shut up. So that's their relationship. A lot of Helena's early time at the manor is Helena playing this cat and mouse game with Farron, except if the mouse was desperate to throw itself into a glue trap and the cat was like, quit it. Helena mostly stays in her room because the hallways are dark, and she is terrified of the dark on account of all her time in the tank. The necrothralls bring her food, which are basically kitchen scraps and slop. Helena doesn't remember much about Farron, which is no surprise. They didn't really interact at school, but they were academic rivals, both neck and neck in the yearly alchemy exam rankings. She remembers that he was an academic, so she's not sure why he's a killer now. But smart people can be killers, Helena. Look at Ted Kaczynski. Aurelia takes her to Kane for her first transference sesh, and Helena can smell the new money on her. Imagine having to house, feed, and clothe your biggest hater. I almost feel bad for her. Also, transference. That's when Kane pokes around her brain to get her acclimated to him being there. He takes a swig of alcohol before they begin, or at least I assume so, because he is described as drinking, and I quote, several fingers of amber liquid from a decanter. I hate when authors do this, okay? Obviously, yeah, we don't know for sure that it's whiskey, but if I'm smart enough to hear amber liquid from a decanter and think booze, surely Helena is too. Is it whiskey? Is it maple syrup? Is it the pee of a beautiful yet profoundly dehydrated woman? Can you just tell me? Farron uses animancy to explore her brain, which is incredibly painful. When Farron stops, she's disoriented and he yells at her to get out. She runs through the manor and she sees this huge Ouroboros on the floor, but her vision is all red, so it looks like it's swimming in blood. She sees a banister and tries to throw herself off it, but Farron stops her and drags her to her room. She will not die until her secrets are safe in Moro's nasty little hands. Also, if Helena thinks she can trick him into killing her, she's wrong. He's on to her. Helena understandably mopes in bed. She remembers how gory and awful the war was, all the bodies, how she had to triage and decide who was going to get to live. She remembers Luke and Lila and all the other members of the Eternal Flame, and they're all blank and rotting, and they're like, we're dead because of you. And Luke's organs are all black and nasty and falling out. These memories would not comfort me in my worst days. When she wakes up, a doctor tells Farron that the nightmare seizure fevers will probably keep happening with transference. The doctor's like, just power through, even if it kills her. And he is saying this in front of her. But Farron's not going to. There's a lot of work to do, so instead he's like, we're just going to space out treatments. Her wardrobe is full of dyed red dresses, straight from Aurelia's closet, but with all the lace and pizzazz ripped off of them. Red was obviously chosen to personally antagonize Helena, and also because Handmaid's Tale. The next day, Farron takes her to the Spirefell courtyard so she can walk around. He reads a newspaper with the headline, Eternal Flame Terrorist Seized. That's our girl. And the paper actually says that she's at Spirefell, and that's so that maybe, if there is any member of the Eternal Flame still out there, maybe they'll come and try to rescue her and then die. So she's bait. Farron leaves the newspaper and Helena takes it to her room so that she can try to figure out what went on in the last 14 months. It's now November 1788, and her last memory is from early 1786. That means the war ended in summer of 1787, and nearly 19 months of the war are totally unaccounted for. Through the power of journalism, we learn that back in the day, Atreus Farron Farron, Kane's dad, was executed for speaking out against the holdfasts. She also learns that Farron being the High Reeve is a secret, probably so that nobody can back him. And also there's some simmering tension with Paladia's neighbors, Novus and Hevgos. Farron being the High Reeve and being a secret, that's another thing that really doesn't add that much tension. And there's an op-ed calling for a sponsored birth program to replace all the alchemists lost in the war. Can I just say that I hate when characters get their exposition from the newspaper? Like, I know I said I love a wiki, but when a character reads the news, I'm like, girl, do that on your own time. I don't want to read boring-ass Wall Street Journal trivia. Stroud and Mandel come to visit. Stroud talks about how sick it would be to use her in the braiding trial since she had such a good repertoire. Luckily, Helena was sterilized as a condition for using her vivimancy for the Order. You know, to prevent soul corruption or whatever. Stroud says that the Eternal Flame used to identify potential vivimancers in the womb for the past 30 years, urging moms to choose to abort or adopt out the babies. The kids who were born were raised in orphanages and told that they needed to work hard to purify the corruption in their souls. Because Stroud is on Team Evil, like, when I read this, I assumed it was a lie. But no, like, Stroud's actually telling the truth here. This is a glimpse of how the Order wasn't this fully good entity. They did cause a lot of hurt and division. That night, she dreams about Luke on the alchemy tower, smoking opium and looking like shit. He and Helena talk about the war. Helena says they can't make choices just because they want to tell a certain story in the end. But Luke is convinced that good will triumph over evil. But every winner says they were the good guys, Luke. It's not as simple as do good and win. Throughout this section, we get little glimpses of scenes from the war that get elaborated on in part 2. And this was one scene that I loved seeing after the war, because it was like, we know that Luke has been proven wrong and his idealism has been crushed. And so you get this sense that Helena knew the futility of the situation. I loved it. I liked that a lot. Later, Farina gives Helena these tablets and kind of does some blah, blah, blah in her mind, and that totally turns off her fear. And she notices that he's less mean to her, but he's like, why would I torture you when you won't react? And it's like, ugh, the sass. He is a sassy boy. I love his sass. He's also wearing a ring on his right hand. It's not a wedding ring. It's a silver ring, tarnished like it's never been taken off. She sees an eye encased in glass in the corner of her room, and that's how Farron's been watching her. That's also why people have been selling their eyes. So now that she's no longer afraid of the dark, she uses her tablet time to explore the house. So the house is full of wrought iron, and it runs through the floors and around the doors and everything, and that's part of why the hallways are so dark. She overhears Aurelia complaining about the thralls, who she's not allowed to torture, and how Farron made these ugly Foxconn mods to the house so that Helena can't throw herself off the balcony. Later, Kane and Helena have this emotional moment when Helena has a seizure after a transference sesh. Kane is there when she wakes up, but she doesn't realize it's him. He says that he's in charge of her care, and Helena's like, do I know you? And he says, I suppose you do. Later, it's the winter solstice, which is Palladian Christmas. You may recall that Helena was supposed to be gone by now, but she'll be staying with Farron for longer instead, because again, a deadline is just a suggestion. The Farrons host a solstice party. Helena's hanging out in her room when this stranger named Eric Lancaster breaks in. He is excited to fuck her shit right up. He's like, you don't remember me, and duh. But before he can do anything, Farron breaks in and tells him to fuck right off. Since her room is no longer a safe place to vibe, she snoops on the party. She sees Aurelia fucking someone else. She also sees two sisters together, a younger, sharp-looking one and an older, dull one. The older one is described as, quote, sometimes she'd drift away as if caught by an invisible current. So one thing about this recap, and also about this entire book, is that it's full of these little mysteries. A lot of them you don't even really know are mysteries until you're into the second part, right? Or it's this thing that seems like one thing, and then you're at the second part and you're like, ooh, and you view that scene in a totally different light. And so I'm kind of trying to share some of those with you, but I realize that a lot of them might just feel really random or not important. But they are. Just assume that anything that I'm telling you, I have a reason to tell you about. Have faith in me. A lot of important people are there. But Farron is standing there in the corner, pouting and refusing to enjoy the party even a little bit. Aurelia walks up to him, clearly freshly done, and Farron doesn't even care. Farron reluctantly, coldly kisses her, and as he does, he locks eyes with Helena, which is kind of hot. Then a family is brought out. Supposedly, this is the last relative of one of the Eternal Flame's noble families. Farron did not want anybody tortured to death at his wholesome family get-together. He kills them stupid fast with his bare hands as a mercy, and everyone sort of awkwardly moves on from the whole thing. On the way back to her room, Helena overhears a fight between Aurelia and her dad. He's scolding her for not getting pregnant yet, but Farron won't have sex with her, even though she has tried to drug him and get him drunk to do so. So do not pity her. She does not deserve it. Farron's waiting for her. He says that she's allowed to ask the servants for things within reason, and he asks why Lancaster was interested in her. And would you believe me if I said she doesn't know? And then they flirt. You're full of surprises. Do you say that to every girl? Ugh. When Helena goes to bed, she sees Farron's shadow outside her door, but she's not scared. Later, Farron checks her memories, which is not transference. He just kind of takes a peek at her recent memories, and I don't think it hurts. He gives zero shits about Aurelia's affair and daddy issues, and then he gives her another pill and lets her loose on the house. She finds this huge room with boarded up windows that looks like Farron was trying to hide it. And there's this big cage welded into the floor. And even though it's big, somebody would have to kind of huddle down to fit into it. And it's not transmutable, she just knows. There's this big alchemical array carved into the floor, and it's bigger and more complex than anything she's ever seen. And it is not for iron alchemy. She's kind of crawling on the floor trying to figure it out, but Farron comes in and he watches her crawling on the floor trying to figure it out before she realizes it's just too defaced to parse. She looks at the cage and she's like, keep a lot of people in cages? And he's like, no, just you. Also, Farron doesn't care that Aurelia cheats. Here's a quote. He didn't look at her. I was commanded to marry her, so I married her. I was never commanded to care. Helena stopped in her tracks. You sound as enslaved as I am. This does not seem to be sarcasm from Helena, which is insane. Sure, she's basically a slave and is regularly getting tortured, yeah, but at least she didn't have to marry someone she doesn't like. Girl. Helena thinks that Farron looks weird because it's if he became undying at 16, he should look 16, but he doesn't. And if he became undying recently, then he should look kind of haggard from the war, you know? And so because of that, she assumes that he wasn't on the front lines and he has no reason to be so angry about things. So Helena actually makes a lot of these assumptions during part 1, and it's really interesting because she is smart, and so I wanted to believe her, and it definitely colored how I saw certain scenes and certain people. But when I reread it for this, I realized she's actually wrong about a lot of things. Anyway, he doesn't even seem to enjoy all of the pain that he inflicts, and he's basically Moro's dog, so what's his deal? She's not sticking around to find out. She explores the grounds and finds this giant wolf monster chained up in the stable. Then she finds a chantry, which is a little home chapel with a plaque to Enid Farron, who died in 1785, 3 years after Luke's reign began. It's Farron's mommy. Helena reads the fucking paper again and notices that some familiar names seem to be vanishing. Then Stroud comes to check her out. She sees signs of malnutrition, and Helena's like, yeah, you know they feed me pig slop, right? Even Stroud is disgusted by this. And Farron didn't know. Aurelia was in charge of feeding her. And it's why? Why did you think your bitch wife would feed her biggest op a balanced and nutritious diet, dude? Stroud wants her well-fed, and unfortunately, it will be for sex purposes. Stroud also does a physical exam that she knocks Helena out for. While walking around Spirefell, Helena finds the dining room, set for a dinner party. There's even a knife she can offer herself with. It's great. She stabs Farron in the heart with it, which does not work. You cannot say that Helena did not fight back. As the Necrothralls take her back to her room, Atreus Farron, who's actually an undying inhabiting the body of a guy, Jan Crowther, says he's seen Helena somewhere. And Farron's like, yeah, there weren't a lot of Southerners at the Institute. Later, Mantle is publicly assassinated in an attempt on the governor's life. And this is huge because the public knew that she was immortal. Helena is thrilled. The resistance must still be out there. And there's a way to kill the undying. Thank you, newspaper! Stroud comes to visit her again, gives her some tablets, knocks her out, and when she wakes up, she feels like she's been kicked in the lower abdomen. Later, Farron takes her to see Morrow. He's chilling in the ruins of Rivertide, which was also the site of the first necromancy war 500 years ago. That's also the city that Paladia was built over. And the room is nasty and dank and rotten, and Morrow is sitting on a throne of corpses. Now, when I said throne of corpses, you might have pictured bodies stacked into a cool chair, kind of Game of Thrones style. But no, it's all of these necrothralls fused into a throne shape. But they're breathing, screaming internally perhaps. I don't know, they all seem alive. Morrow looks like shit if you are curious. His skin is sloughing off his nasty, rotten, double-boned tans, and his organs are playing peekaboo, which you never want. He takes a look inside her brain, which is incredibly painful, and declares that the Eternal Flames Animancer lives. And Farron's like, Elaine Boyle? And Morrow's like, who? The transference has been going badly because she's been resisting, which only an animancer could do. And this is a huge surprise to Farron, and he begs forgiveness. We also learn that Helena was captured near the Westport lab after the bombing, possibly in an attempt to rescue Lila Bayard. Atreus tried to tell Kane, but he didn't listen. Helena's the bomber. Then Morrow tortures Farron in front of Helena because Farron's missed so much and hasn't caught Mandel's assassins, who are definitely members of the Eternal Flame, because the weapon used to kill her was obsidian, and that was secret Eternal Flame knowledge. Helena's memories might be protecting that person's identity. Farron vows not to fail and says that he will die before he loses Helena. When Helena and Farron leave, Helena was pretty shocked to learn that she was a terrorist. She's like, I was a healer. I didn't fight. Farron says nothing. Also, the Westport lab was Bennett's experimental research site, and she bombed the lab to save Lila from something terrible that might have happened there. And she and Farron fight, and we get this quote. "Are you wanting a confession?" he finally asked. "Shall I tell you everything I've done?" A question rose to her lips, and she felt as if it was vital that she ask. She leaned forward, trying to see his face. "Do you want to?" And then he goes nonverbal and takes her back to Spirefell. A few days later, Helena and Farron talk. She suspects that Mandel wasn't the first Undying to be killed, and Farron's been covering it up. He does not confirm or deny any of this. She theorizes that the Undying are the source of Morrow's power, and that the repopulation program is an attempt to create an Animancer baby to become Morrow's new vessel. Because look at him, he's a nasty double-boned rot man. His kind of immortality seems like it sucks, and if he's just giving it away, he must be getting something out of it. She didn't understand why he'd want Paladia, and the Resistance was just like, yeah, of course there's an evil necromancer we have to kill. That's what we do. And Farron confirms that, yeah, dog, Morrow's dying. Later, when Farron comes by to check her memories, he notices that Helena is reluctantly concerned for him because Morrow has started torturing him on the rag. "Worrying about me?" His face twisted into a gloating smile. "I never thought I'd see the day." Her face burned. "Don't take it as a compliment. I hate torture." Anyway, Aurelia has a party for the vernal equinox. This is one of those parts that is a little bit icky, so skip ahead if you feel like it. The male guests talk about going to Central and participating in Stroud's selective breeding program, which is somehow worse than plain old store-brand eugenics. They describe physically and sexually assaulting the women in the program. Farron has not been participating. Not interested in rape is a very low bar, but I'm glad he cleared it. Helena is horrified by this, but she also feels guilty that she isn't where they are. On her way back to her room, she's tackled and pinned by Eric Lancaster, who says that he deserves to rape her because he caught her killing Atreus after she destroyed the lab. And he says, "You've heard me scream plenty now," he said huskily. "I wonder what it sounds like when you do." Helena runs, but he catches her and sedates her. When she comes to, Lancaster is dragging her somewhere. Farron arrives, throws him off her, and rips out his organs without killing him. I would not consider myself to be a squeamish reader, but this did make my tummy flip when I read it. Farron takes her back to her room and cleans her up. She didn't want the Necrothralls to do it because they're too dead, which obviously they can't control, so what the fuck, Helena? He says he's not going to hurt her, and she thinks to herself, like, yeah, Farron only hurts me on certain days, and today is not one of those days. This is a slow burn in this first section, like we haven't even gotten to the Romantasy, because it was like, when I read this, I was like, oh, so the Stockholm Syndrome has set in. That's what this book is going to be. It's not like that. Anyways, he has to go to the city, but he tells her to stay in her room until she comes back. The next day, Aurelia comes in. She has a newspaper and an iron staff because she is going to personally beat me into enduring another newspaper exposition session. She kicks out the maids and seals the door with iron. She is so mad that she's going to monologue her origin story at Helena, and there will be no interruptions because she has the talking stick. Aurelia came from a low-tier Iron Guild family, and when Kane was born, people thought there might be something wrong with him because his family was kind of secretive about him. Her dad smelled opportunity. So since he and Aurelia's mom were cousins, they thought that they could probably have a girl with pure iron resonance who the Farrons could marry their son to keep control of the guild. Her mom got pregnant twice, and the two girls before her didn't show signs of iron resonance, so they were aborted. Aurelia was the third girl, and her mom didn't really love her that much. And then Aurelia hits us with the newspaper. It's made the bold editorial choice to show a photo of Farron disemboweling Lancaster in the lobby of Central Hospital on the front page. And now everyone knows he's the High Reeve. Even though Aurelia was made to be Kane's wife, she knew he didn't love her. On their wedding day, he dropped her off at Spirefell and then fucked right off. So she thought maybe he was gay or asexual or whatever, and she accepted that. Until Helena came along, and suddenly he paid attention to her. He even gave her a tour of the house. But Lancaster cared about her and took interest in her and encouraged her to throw parties. And so maybe Kane killed him because he finally found a single shit to give. But then she realized that Lancaster was only using her to get to Helena. And why would anyone care about Helena? Literally, we do not know, but we will find out if you let me keep reading. So she stabs the talking stick in the ground, and the iron bars like pull Helena to the ground. Okay, so this is another one that I have to warn you. I'm going to put the warning on the screen, and if you don't want to hear literally anything about that, and I get it, you skip ahead to the time code here. So she decides she's going to rip out Helena's eyes, and Helena thinks Farron will come. Then Aurelia she has these like iron rings and she turns them into claws and she cuts Helena's cheek and then gruesomely, like the scene is so icky. I'm so sorry. Okay, so just to be clear, she hooks the eye out of the socket. It's like, but it's like dangling. It's like blah, blah, blah. Okay, but before she can finish the job, the iron bars in the floor rise up, wrap around Aurelia and crush her into unconsciousness. So Farron comes in and he's horrified and he insists that she help him fix her eye, and she does, and she kind of uses resonance through his hand. And so it's kind of like, it's kind of like this. And it's like, it's a lot of work. She's like, it's a lot of just like layering tissue over whatever. It'll take hours. And he's like, put me in, coach. I can do it. And then like, even when her eyes back in, like her vision is blurry and he's like, we can do more. And Helena's like, oh, maybe if we had some like some eye drops, some cool eye drops, here's how you would mix it up. And he's like, on it. Servants, get the kit. Farron kind of puts Aurelia back together and wakes her back up, and he threatens to kill her if she ever goes near Helena again. And then she leaves, thoroughly humbled. So what Kane did was he kind of like manipulated the house, and that would have taken like I said, it's like you usually have to have like touch to do it, but Farron is of course super strong. So Farron had reached the edge of the property and he was finally close enough that he could actually like manipulate the house. So that's what he did. And he could do that because Artemon Bennett, the crazy evil alchemist doctor, did something to him as punishment, which he will not be elaborating on at this time. The servants bring back the kit, so Kane mixes up a little concoction for her eyes based on the ingredients Helena recommends. He even brings an optician to check her out and see what a good job he did, and she's expected to recover well. Now, you might wonder why he cares so much. And it's because the eye nerve connects to the brain nerve and he needs her brain. It's not because he likes her or anything, baka. And then because not enough is going wrong in Helena's life, Stroud comes by to announce that she secretly reversed Helena's sterilization and she's ready to join the repopulation program. She tells Farron the great news. See, she could take Helena to Central and pair her with anyone, but they really want to pair her with Farron so they can try to breed an animancer. Farron has 2 months to get Helena pregnant or she'll be sent to Central. And I do want to note that this is an insane timeline. The odds of getting pregnant each month are 20% if you're trying and assuming nothing's going wrong. Like, this is insane. They're being set up to fail. Okay, so this is a part where we're discussing rape. So if you want to skip, just because you don't even want to hear it talked about at all, skip here. And it's distressing. The whole thing is distressing. There are no good options. There's not even a least bad option. Like, his options are basically he cannot rape her, in which case she will be raped even worse. Or he can rape her, which he does not want to do at all. And it's like, could he kill everybody, Helena included? Maybe, I guess. But at this point, we don't know what his goals are, right? We don't know if the nuclear option is possible or on the table. Also, Farron's been tortured again because the public found out he was the High Reeve. And then finally, the rapes happen. These are not sexy scenes. They're not gratuitous. They do not titillate. Helena is very much dissociating. Neither character seems to enjoy them at all. So we're just going to talk about it now because I know people have thoughts, and then that way anybody who doesn't want to hear about them, like they can skip it, right? One is the presence of rape at all, right? I mean, like, that's the Handmaid's Tale part. Like, if you don't have that, it's a totally different book. There's ample warning that it's going to be there, not only from the book's reputation, right? But to like, there's content warnings, there's the narrative itself. Like, if you won't tolerate a book where rape is an element, like, you won't tolerate this book. And two, and this is probably the one that I've seen the most controversy about, is whether or not this was a double rape. So one, like, I mean, Helena very unambiguously raped. Farron is dissociating, like, pretty clearly the whole time, does not enjoy it. I think after the first one, he throws up and then, like, immediately leaves. So at this point in the book, like, I was willing to put enough faith in SenLinYu and in the narrative to buy that he was being raped as well. But I kind of knew that, like, if the book didn't sell me on that, then, like, I would be free to change my mind. Spoiler, I think it did. I feel like based on kind of how part 3 goes and some of his reactions to things then, like I felt pretty convinced that he was also being raped. I think if I were to like summarize it, I would say that like he is complying in these scenes, but he's not consenting, if that makes sense, right? It's not really a yes from either of them. Anyways, that's done. So Helena wonders what it is that Farron actually wants. She thinks that he must have revealed himself as High Reeve on purpose. New Paladia was vulnerable. They'd lost a lot of people in the war. Their industry was weak. There weren't really a lot of alchemists left. So in a lot of ways, the High Reeve was the true power, right? And revealing himself just leaves an opportunity for another country to strike. Or it leaves an opportunity for the High Reeve to take over. She doesn't know which one, and she doesn't know what her part in it is. A few days later, Lumithia is in Ascendance. Remember that this makes alchemists a little loony. Helena finds him in a room with alcohol bottles strewn about. Or maybe it's alcohol, who knows? Maybe it's the mysterious amber liquid again. And he's drunk. He calls her Helena, which he usually does not. He says, and I quote, "If I'd known what pain you'd cause me, I never would have taken you." He sighed, and she could smell the liquor on his breath as his head dipped closer. She had no idea what he meant, if she was supposed to apologize. "But at this point, I suppose I deserve to burn. I wonder if you'll burn too." And then he kisses her, passionately, and she likes it. And when she moans, Farron snaps out of it and looks stunned. Helena runs off, and she's disgusted that she's so desperate for love and kindness that she latched onto him, and she feels like she betrayed the resistance for kissing the guy who started the war to begin with. She goes to her room and she smashes her head against the window until it's bloody, but Farron stops her and heals her. And then she says, "I would rather spend the rest of my life being raped in Central than spend a minute of it having feelings for you." But as he tries to leave, she pulls him close. He notices the door is open, and then he calls her pathetic and lonely. He's not her friend, and he wants to be done with her. Then he leaves. A few weeks later, Stroud comes to check her out and confirms that Helena is indeed pregnant. Helena can barely believe it. She keeps thinking no, and then she's screaming. So Stroud is actually trying to torment her, because when Helena destroyed the Westport lab, she killed Bennett and destroyed all of their work and experiments. Farron tells her to stop fucking with Helena, and then he is so petty, I just love it. He is like, "You are only where you are because everyone else is dead. Any accomplishments at Central are because of Shiseo, not you. Oh, and also, I looked at your science and it's fucking bullshit. Have you ever heard of a control variable?" And then he kicks her out. He knocks Helena out, but she feels him tuck her into bed and tell her he's sorry. When Helena wakes up, Farron tells her that she's not allowed to try to miscarry or hurt herself, and she'll be monitored full time. He also brings her a medical textbook about pregnancy because he's like, "I know you're going to spin out if you don't have all the information." Weeks later, the pregnancy is making Helena very sick. So because she was a healer, it's possible that her life force was already pretty drained, but the baby's fine. Morrow thinks that Helena's keeping her memories hidden by internalizing her resonance and throwing all of her energy into that. And so now that she's pregnant, she doesn't have any energy to grow the baby and maintain her mush brain. Also, apparently Morrow was such a powerful animancer that he stole all of his mother's life in the womb and was birthed from her corpse on the funeral pyre. And unfortunately, that is so fucking badass. Stroud hopes that Helena's memories and the baby will come before she dies. And Helena realizes that everybody knew this would kill her. She just hopes it happens before the pregnancy is viable. Weeks later, Helena's pretty much bedridden. Farron sometimes sits with her and smooths her hair and massages her hands. The maid Necrothrall seems to fret over her in such a human way that Helena wonders if she's even dead. Helena just gets worse and worse, and then she has this dream that Farron is sitting next to her, glowing silver. Her palm is pressed to his chest and she feels like she's dying. He hugs her tight, tells her to stay, and the light grows. She feels it inside her and it feels familiar. And then when she wakes up, she has a lot more energy, and she has this strong sense that there's something important she needs to do, but she doesn't know what. Farron comes in the room and she tells him she promised she'd wait, and then she has a seizure. And during the seizure, she gets these glimpses of memories of people from the war, all of which culminate in a memory of Farron saying, "I have warned you. If something happens to you, I will personally raise the eternal flame." That isn't a threat. It's a promise. Consider your survival as much a necessity to the resistance as holdfasts. If you die, I will kill every single one of them. And with that, all her memories have been unlocked. And that sets us up for part 2. But first, part 1. So there's so many scenes in here that don't feel that significant when you read them, but then like later they take on such a different meaning. You'll see. I tried to pick out my favorites, but I'm sure there are other ones other people love just as much. But I do want to address kind of some of like the criticisms people had, because this is my Alchemized apologetics session. So I have heard criticisms about like how much agency the characters have and the characterization and the repetition. And I think it makes more sense to just like talk about that in later parts where we actually get resolution, right? We're going to do what we can. One thing is like Cain is a love interest. So this book is a slow burn. Honestly, I feel like in part 1, the romance hasn't even started. And that's kind of crazy, right? Like this is such a slow burn that like we're at page 300 and the candle has not been lit. After reading this part though, I was kind of skeptical that this book could convince me that they would fall in love. We will talk about how that shakes out like in part 2 and 3. This book is very long and I do wish that it was tighter. I feel like there are a lot of scenes that are just sort of like Helena remembering or thinking about things because she can't really do anything. And like the manacles go through her bones. So it's like she can't really use her hands or wrists. Like there's really just not a lot she is physically able to do. I think I just wish that part 1 was tightened up. Despite the like violence and the torture, I didn't feel like the stakes felt super high. Like the horror gets more horrifying, sure, but it's like so many bad things happen to Helena over the course of part 1. The book as a whole, but like part 1 especially, that it's like it's hard to imagine the risk of something worse happening, right? Like we can't up the ante when our chips are nearly all on the table. It's not like Helena really has the opportunity to like take risks. So it's basically just like what new horrors will befall her. The stakes just didn't feel super high. The tension didn't feel super high for me. But we do have to talk about like the torture and like the dark and grittiness of it all. I took a lot of the torture out of this recap, honestly, because like it is repetitive. And in Manacled, it's just like the Crucio curse, which I think is just like pain. But in this book, it's like the Vivimancers are like touching her neck and it's like, oh, pain through her body or whatever, right? I knew what I was getting into before I read it. I knew that it was going to be a dark book. Like I didn't feel like it was so bleak and depressing that I didn't want to continue. I didn't feel like the torture parts were like torture porn, right? Like I didn't feel like the book luxuriated in her torture. Really, like the eye scene is probably the ickiest one. It wasn't too much for me. I get that it's too much for some people. So I did see reviews say that like this doesn't belong in the Romantasy canon. And honestly, I agree. And not because it's bad, not because it's overhyped, but because like I just don't really think this is a Romantasy. It's not hitting really the romance beats. It doesn't really have the same vibe as other like Romantasy heavy hitters. Even just their relationship, right? Like it just isn't that. So I am sure that publishers receive way more awesome manuscripts than they can reasonably publish and put money into. Romantasy is huge right now. Manacled was huge. Harry Potter is a massive IP. The girls who grew up with Harry Potter are buying big girl books now. The market is huge. If I was Del Rey, I would look at Alchemized and I would expect it to print money and I would snatch that shit right up. But the other side of that is that like that does mean that people are not going into this book with an open mind. If you came in because you kind of expected a similar vibe to Harry Potter, like you're not really going to get that. If you heard Dramione and thought, oh, that's another enemies to lovers, like it's not really that. It is, but it isn't, you know? And honestly, like if you expected Hermione and loved Hermione, like Hermione is not Helena. Cain's still pretty much Draco. We have to concede there. And so like I said, like this book is split. There are people who love it, love it, love it. There's people who hate it and were so let down and maybe even disgusted by it. And I kind of wonder if some of the problem is just like, those are people who otherwise would not have picked up a book like this. I don't know. That's my take. But I am really curious, like if you felt like you were the perfect person to read this book and you didn't like it at all, let me know down in the comments. Like, what did you think of it? Because like, I'm really interested in hearing why. Also, I'm really curious if there's anybody out there who loved Manacled and just didn't love Alchemized. I would really love to know your thoughts too. Yeah, but if you're one of the people who didn't like this book, like that's fine. If you DNF'd it, like that's also fine. So when I opened this book, my Kindle told me it would take over 20 hours for me to read it. That's nearly a day of my life. And like, you don't need to spend a day of your life on a book that you don't like or enjoy. Books are not meant to be endured. This is fun. We're doing this for fun. Anyways, next up is part 2. The girls are going to war. It takes place entirely in the past during the last months of the war. It is my favorite part. There is so much there. It is 3 sets of footprints on the beach. There is 1 set of footprints, and that's like, oh, is that when you abandoned me? No, that's when part 2 carried you. That's how I feel about the book. There's so much there. It's delightfully gritty. I love it so much. I'm really excited to talk about it. Also, if you haven't read Alchemised, now is your chance. Like, read along with me. And if you do, next time maybe we can do a cute little book club in the comments. Anyways, that's it. So don't forget to like the video if you liked the video, subscribe if you want to see more videos, and leave a comment and let me know what you think. I'm so hungry for your thoughts. Okay, bye. You're so beautiful. I love you. Val, what were your thoughts? She's so perfect.